GM, welcome to From A to Z. It's me, Zombie Shepherd, and I am going to be dropping an album soon. I've been really working on the final mix of it. As far as the creative stuff goes, the first 4 songs, there's 5 songs, so the first 4 songs are mixed and ready and done. And there's not a whole lot that I would do to those, I don't think. I think they're done. So let's just assume they're done. The 5th song, I still need to write lyrics and do the vocals, and that is a big deal. So I'm making it sound like, oh, I'm almost done, but I'm going to finish this because it's the goal. And I think, I've been working on this album for a while, and part of the reason that I haven't finished it is because the songs are precious to me in a sense, or at least like the first and the last song, which are the beginnings of this album. The songs I wrote first are the first and the last one. And they're very precious to me, and I love the riffs, and I love playing it. Like, whenever I pick up a guitar, I'm playing these riffs. And so it's not good, especially, I guess, in our current, content climate. Like, it's not good to have a piece of art be too precious, because when it becomes too precious, you hang on to it for too long, and you don't necessarily do service to the art itself. And I could say that there's maybe times where this went through that, but at the same time, I'm not going to recommend anybody go through the process I went through with this album. But I also do not in any way regret the time that I've taken with this album. The reason I don't regret it is because I learned a lot through this process, and rather than rushing this album out, I actually just put out more music with the processes I learned. So if you've listened to any of my music, then the reason those songs, Blood and Honey is a really good example. Blood and Honey has a lot of the production techniques that I learned while recording this album. They all went into that album. So basically, by the time I did Blood and Honey and released that song, I had fully learned a lot of production techniques. At least, that you're always learning more and more and more. You're always getting better. But I had learned a lot of production techniques to the point that I was able to say, well, look, I haven't finished this album yet because the album still has a lot of moving parts and things I haven't finished, but I can finish this song using those techniques. And what I mean by that is, when I first started writing, when I first wrote those riffs, I could not play drums at all. I don't even think I had a drum set at the time. So at that time, I was still doing a band project, trying to work on a band. I was writing other songs with that band, and that band kind of slowly eroded and turned into kind of a solo project. Or maybe it was always a solo project that I was trying to bring people in on and grow, because no one ever really took ownership of that band. And it was also, that band was me learning Ableton Live, because I wasn't just learning. I already knew how to record from the very beginning. When I first started playing music, I was a singer in the beginning. I played guitar, but for the first band I was in, I was a singer. And I, very early on, bought a 1402 Mackie, and I bought a Tascam 6-track tape recorder. And even before I had the tape recorder, I would just go with whatever little shitty tape recorder. And I was the guy, since I was the vocalist, I was like, well, I have to record the music so that I can write the vocals. I'll do the vocals at home. I was doing a lot at practice, but in order to really get it right, I needed to be able to hit rewind and go over and over and over. And I'm showing my age right now with the technology. So that's what I was doing. And then what was the point of all that? That like I knew how to record. So once I got to Ableton, it wasn't about recording as much as it was like, okay, how do I cut these clips down into, it was like learning a lot of tape techniques and stuff kind of thing, but it was really cutting down the clips for the idea. Like if you're familiar with Ableton, you can put things into scenes. So that band that I was doing at the time was an experiment in how can we integrate Ableton Live into like the musicianship of it, and like having like samples and you know, synthesizers and whatever. I wanted to experiment with kind of doing, you know, performing with the tape more or less. But Ableton is so flexible that you can trigger things to happen. So it was really about trying to figure out how this could play into, you know, a band. And didn't really have a drummer. Started off with a bass player and another guitar player who also had a drum machine and was doing some programming. So we started off with a lot of drum programming. And anyway, point was I learned Ableton during that band. And then I got a drum set during that time. And I had the drum set up in the studio for other drummers to come play on. But I never really took that initiative. So I was learning Ableton and all this stuff throughout that time period. And then I basically, you know, the way this ties into this album is because I started showing those riffs to the guys, but I didn't like, and I did start trying some of the looping, and it was like maybe one of the second or third songs we were working on with that project was the first song or maybe the last song of this album. But basically I did try to show these songs, but it wasn't going well. Other songs were doing better with the project, and so I kind of just took these songs and took them to the side. I was like, all right, well, I'll continue working on these on my own. And I got really familiar with Ableton through that, and then I started deciding that, like, okay, well, if I want to get these songs done, then I probably have to play the drums for these. And I didn't want to do drum programming. I'm not very good at drum programming anyway, but and I mean, the only reason I'm not good at it is because I haven't spent a lot of time with it. It's not that I can't do the MIDI programming and stuff like that. It's like, it's all pretty easy. And I have done programmed drums, but it's not my thing. And I really don't want to. The reason it's really not my thing is because a lot of my riffs on guitar don't fit cleanly in the lines. And even, I guess, if they did, like, not that they're like truly weird time signatures, but there's almost like time signature changes within a riff. Like the first half of a riff will be a different time signature than the second half of the riff. And it's kind of a weird, you know, I like this push and pull of the rhythm and the tempo, and it's not arrhythmic, but it is off rhythm sometimes. And I like some buoyancy and some flexibility in the riff. And so for that reason, programmed drums don't really work, because in order to make a programmed drum work, I would have to. It's really complicated doing this with Ableton and probably Pro Tools as well, but like really with anything where you're going to have a grid. So the problem is that, like, if you don't pre-program in it, like, you almost have to know your time signature changes and what you're going to be doing like before you do it or as you go, because you need those time signature changes to happen within the DAW like as you're doing it. And I think the problem is, and there's definitely workarounds around this because I've done it, but the problem is that if you just record, say you record all your guitar tracks and you just do it like with your own. You know, the reason you'd want to do it ahead of time is if you want the computer metronome. If you want to use the DAW's metronome, then it needs to be there ahead of time because you want the metronome to change as you're playing the riff. But if you're using an external metronome, or you're not using a metronome at all and you're just recording these riffs, but your DAW is in, standard, whatever it opens to, like 120, 4/4, then like when you go back and try to apply the click where you want it to be, it will mess up the wave files. It will change the audio. Obviously, there's ways around that. There's ways to just like, don't do that type of thing. And but it's a pain in the ass. And so for me, coming from tape and having skipped over a lot of the digital age, meaning like I used a tape recorder, and then when all the little digital recorders came out, I have like a Tascam DRW44L or something. You can plug it's got a mic on it, and you can plug mics into it. And I actually used that recorder on this album. But like I got that way later, and the point being, I got it for photography, and the point being that I kind of skipped over the little like cheap digital recorder age. I didn't like digging through menus. That was always crap for me. And I really went straight from like tape to DAW because I didn't like that in between age. And I basically was a bit of a Luddite. It's funny, I was like that with technology in the sense that I grew up with the internet and grew up with technology and video game systems and stuff like that. And then like, somewhere through my 20s, I was just like a total Luddite and was just like, I don't want anything to do with technology. I want to keep, playing guitar through tube amps and like being in a band and recording on tape until the time. I knew like when we got to the recording part, we were going to have to put it on a computer, and I was working towards that. But even now, like this album is microphones into a computer. Like it very much is an analog thing. I love the analog, and but don't get me wrong, there are like I love synthesizers, and this is the next, I guess, branch of the story. Like I spent a long time playing with ambience and synthesizers and learning synthesis, and I had a deep love. If you know me, my favorite composer is Ligeti, and my favorite, I guess not. Yeah, I mean, like definitely up there in my favorites is Wendy Carlos for synthesis and synthesizers, and like Wendy Carlos, Aphex Twin, obviously like Nine Inch Nails. Nine Inch Nails was like something I was into as a kid and have always loved and appreciated. But then like as my taste got, and the Prodigy was also something I got into as a kid. And so the reason I bring all this up is because I got into a long period where when I was working on learning production and learning, more importantly, learning drums, I had to learn a lot about digital production, but learning drums was like a hard thing for me as far as, like I wasn't a drummer before, and I still don't consider myself a great drummer. I don't know that I could drum very well for other people. I definitely, if I wanted to be in a band, it's going to take a lot of work, but I know my riffs. And so I can write to my riffs because I know where the rhythms go and stop and pull and push and pull. And so while I was learning the drums and like taking my sweet time, that's the other thing too, is it's not like all of this stuff. It's like, I guess if I really like pushed and was like, I have to like learn production and learn drums, and like I could have done this album in a few years, but I was taking my time. I was doing other projects. I'm always putting something out. So the fact that I've worked on this album for, whatever, at least 10 years, like, and I've had the riffs for much longer than that. Like the fact that I've done all this work on it isn't because I was working on it the whole time. It was because I was constantly going through a learning process where I would be like, all right, I'm going to finish other projects and come back to this. And so I went through a long phase, my SoundCloud phase. If you go check out my SoundCloud, it is a lot of electronic music, a lot of ambience, a lot of experimenting with synthesis, and that being mainly, not as driven from the Nine Inch Nails, Prodigy, Atari Teenage Riot side of things, but more from the Ligeti, Wendy Carlos, Aphex Twin side of things, where I was like, okay, what kind of and even like Lustmord and Neurosis and stuff like that. Like, I spend a long time really experimenting with dark sounds, and that was also fun in production because when you're mixing a band, it's like, I guess at least for me, like, mixing a band made a lot of sense. You know where everything is supposed to sit arrangement wise. When you get into ambience and you get into, you know, synthesis, like, in a way, since synthesized sounds are easier to mix, it's really if you arrange correctly. So as long as you don't put too many instruments in and go too crazy with too many things cluttering up the mix, then like it's really easy to mix electronic music because all of the sounds are already perfect. That was the point of Wendy Carlos going through all those experiments, was, you know, so that Yamaha and Casio and all these other companies could come back and just make a good violin sound on $100 keyboard. So now in 2026 in the DAW age, like, these sounds are perfect. They are basically radio ready already from the get-go. Slap a, you know, master channel on it and call it a day. But that's not to take away from the mixing mastering process, but it's to say that these electronic instruments are already pretty damn near close to perfect, and as long as you arrange properly, then you really shouldn't have to do a whole lot of mixing. You just have to stay out of each other's way, and then you can do more of the like panning and getting weird and experimental. And that's part of the reason that it's part of the reason that I, you know, with doing the ambient stuff, it became more about like working with instruments I wasn't used to, working with arrangement, and thinking about the pan and experimenting with stuff like that. And not, you know, actually what was a thing that I had to worry about a lot of the time was people telling me my music was too high. Like, I wasn't doing enough to cut the tails off of these extremely shrill sounds that I was working with in some cases. And people did not like that. I got a lot of feedback about my feedback. And just shrill tones. But anyway, going through that experimental phase of the ambiance led me into, you know, I did a lot of animated film stuff where I did a lot of Foley work, which went right back into working with microphones. And then it had a lot to do with, you know, really working with emotion. And the fun thing about working with film was it was really a lot of what I've done in the last decade or more is deconstructing my ideas about the band and music. And I think because, like, for me, that was the default. Like, growing up, I thought about music as bands. And it's not because electronic music and these other things didn't exist, but because, like, I guess to me, like, that I've never had as much love for the artist, like for the solo person, as much as I have had for the group, which is funny because this is a solo album. But interestingly enough, I guess it is a solo album, but it's all these different aspects of myself. So it's almost not a solo album because it was made over such a time period that, like, each instrument is a different person. I was not the same person going into each instrument, and you'll hear that each instrument has its own space and its own voice, and very much operates as a band. But point I was making is that, like, I'm glad I have that ability and that, like, composition and arrangement skill to be able to do that. But I spent a long time deconstructing the idea of what a song had to be, and deconstructing the idea of a band and things like that and the arrangement, but still having to be aware of like what people are expecting to hear. Like you can't, even if you want to get really weird and experimental and single instruments and different things like that, you can't leave people's ear feeling empty. And so understanding how to get things to sound right, or even more knowing that they sound right, and then having to like deconstruct the idea of that, oh, I have to put more on this to make it what people want. A big thing that I've had to work through is this idea that like you have to have vocals on a song, and I don't believe that. I know you can have songs without vocals, but then I also am like, how much of your music becomes inaccessible when you just refuse to have vocals in places that maybe should have vocals. And I think that is part of understanding, you know, arrangement, in the sense of like, yes, I deconstructed the idea of like how music needs to be presented, and I do want to do more. And there was a time where this album was going to be instrumental because I didn't want to write lyrics for it and I didn't want to do it. And somewhere along the line, I realized like, you have to. Like these songs lend themselves to a good vocalist, and they lend themselves to me. They were written for me. Like as a vocalist, I wrote these songs. You know, I wrote these songs with the idea that I would play and sing them. And then as I got more into the digital, I was like, well, maybe I'm not going to have to play and sing them. I can do this stuff with Ableton and everything. But then I kept going back to this idea that I want to play and sing them, partially because like you can call this a hang up, and it's something I've held on to. And actually, as we go into AI, I'm glad I held on to this. And I'm so secure in my choices as an artist and a musician, and I love it. And one of those things is that, like, I remember my dad telling me this, and it's something that stuck with me. And your song should sound good on an acoustic guitar. Like, you should be able to play your song unplugged. You should be able to play your song with very basic, you know, I shouldn't need a computer. I shouldn't need an amp. I shouldn't need anything in order to perform the song. I should only need very basic instruments. And so the reason I say that is because for me, that is an acoustic guitar. And for other people, it might just be beating on something. Like, if you can start a beat, you know, on a table or whatever, and then you can start performing your song with that thing, then you can perform unplugged. And there's something beautiful about, you know, and you can do a cappella, and some songs, especially if you have a really strong voice, singing a song is enough. Nothing wrong with that. But for me, like, that was something I thought about with, like, the more I got into this, I'm like, I like the idea of being able to, because I love these songs, I want to be able to pick up a guitar and play. I play them all the time anyways. So if I'm going to play them all the time, then I might as well write them in a way that I can sing them, so that when I'm just sitting on the couch at home playing this, you know, for Sylvester and Shelley, I can just sing it right there. I don't have to, like, you know, need anything. The first and the last songs are very much like that. And then the reason I brought up all of the experimentation with film and ambiance and all those things is because I think the middle of the album, 5 songs, the second, third, fourth songs are more of the things that I learned about working with electronic instruments and working with production. Reason I say that is because the second song, I haven't even talked about the arrangement of the first and the last, but I'll kind of talk about this a little bit. So the second song took me a while to really get comfortable with what I'm doing there, because it is one synthesizer and one vocal. Yeah, it's one vocal track. Like, I don't think I even did like a layer to it. I think I did one vocal track because it's essentially me performing a piece of poetry. And so it's not singing that requires like the layers and that kind of thing. It is poetry being spoken. So I think it lends itself to the one voice. I did do some reverb and some EQ and things. It's treated, but it's just spoken word more or less. But I really love the keyboard for it because I played it live. There's and what I mean by that is like when I was experimenting with this voice, I put on this voice using the Venom, which is it's an FM synthesizer, and I love playing on it. And I just found this voice that I liked that was very soft, ambient pad, and I just played something that felt good. And it is a live performance in the sense that what you're hearing, I'm pretty sure the whole thing is played straight through. I know there's no cuts. The only thing I'm doubting is sometimes at the end of things, when I'm in the editing phase, I will cut off like the end and sometimes repeat the end. It's like a thing I like to do, and I've done it on a few of my Keys tracks. I think sometimes when I do these long pieces that are flowing and sometimes not exactly perfect, like countable measures, there's some arrhythmic to it, there's some non-repetitive parts to it. I like to sometimes do, like, I'll like to repeat things at the end just to give you place to latch onto before I cut away. So there might be some editing at the very end, but the point is what you hear, that is one pass. I played that. I didn't like do multiple takes of a thing and multiple stops and edits and cuts. I played this thing. And I guess the part that made it hard to hold on to it that way. There is also the thing that unites the three parts is the drums. And the drums aren't, they're not drums that I played. They're drums that you could say they're programmed, because I did some experiments with a drum app on a tablet or my phone, or I've done it on a few different things, so I don't remember exactly where these tracks came from, but I experimented with a percussive app to get these sounds. So there is on the second track there is one drum, or one bass drum that goes, and it's not just the app, but I also put a 606 kick on it to give it a bigger oomph for this song. So there's piano synth, there's an ambient synth, and then there's drums, and then there's spoken word poetry. The thing that I went back and forth with was this is like, do people, like, how is this going to be taken? Like, it's very simple, and ultimately I decided, like, this is what's right. Like, this is what's right for this song. I could do more. I don't want to. And that's, that is the ultimate struggle I'm learning, is like knowing when I'm right for doing less. Like, I would say there's a lot of my music, my ambient music that I put out, that I did think about doing more for it. But when I thought about, like, particularly the album Skeleton Key and Feather, I put out Skeleton Key and Feather, I want to say that's 2016, as is. Meaning, like, I just finished it, I did the whole thing digitally, and then I had plans to add bass and guitar and drums, and I wanted to do this whole thing to it, and then it probably would have led to vocals. And then I thought about doing that, and then we were also working on films at the time, so I think the reason I ultimately ended up not doing it is because I felt like it was going to be a lot of work, And I guess I just didn't feel I didn't feel maybe that the outcome was what I was looking for. I guess I knew early on, like, this is going to be a lot of work, and what's going to come out of the other end isn't necessarily going to be any better than what I have here. So I thought, you know what, like, this is actually almost a better album because it is more demanding on the listener. And that's another thing I've struggled with and come to accept, is that I don't care about being demanding on the listener. I guess if I want to be super successful, then I would make myself more accessible, but that's not the art I'm trying to do. So I am asking the listener for a lot, and I'm okay with that. And so with Skeleton Key and Feather, I ultimately decided not to go more. And so, like, with this, like, I thought about for a long time, and then I was like, no, this is going to be the 3 instruments. This is ultimately, like, what this thing is. And I don't want to outshine this beautiful improvised ambient synth that I did, nor do I want to, for a long time, I thought about releasing it even without the poem. But then I thought about it, and I'm like, well, the spoken word gives more substance. And so, like, in a lot of the spoken word is very repetitive. I mean, I think it's the same 4 to 8 bars over and over, somewhere between 4 and 8 bars, and they're repeating with different changes each time. So there are interesting changes even throughout the poetry, but it repeats. The synth line itself has repetition. The bass is repetitive. The repetition of it is part of the mantra. And so I thought about it, and I was like, I don't want to take away from that meditative part of this. And it's really great coming out of the song before it, which has a lot of changing guitar parts, a lot, it is a rock metal type song. There's some yelling, there's some singing, there's some ambience in that song. And so with that hard, opening, and then, like, coming into this ambient spoken word, I think is really nice, juxtaposition of each other. I think it works really beautifully. And then coming out of that, this drum keeps going into the next song. And the next song has guitar in it. And the way I did that also experiments. It's a lot of what I learned. There's no synthesizers in the second song. So the second song has synthesizer and the drum. But then there's no, I use that same percussion app, and which I don't even know if you can find it anymore. It was called Sphere Tones. I have it on a couple of my old devices, but I think I've gotten my use out of it in the sense that I've recorded a number of, like, long tracks of me playing with it and stuff like that. So I have a good number of things that I could go back and edit and sample, even if I could never play the app again. But so there's the one drum in the first song, and that one drum carries us, or in the second song. It's the first song of the trilogy, the second song of the album. So in the third song, the middle track, that drum carries us in, but then I use more of the sounds from the Sphere Tones app to, there's a lot of things going on. And the cool thing about this app is, like, it's not like a drum machine in the sense that you set things in a bar kind of way, like, which is what I love about it, because essentially you just drag these spheres, you get the tone you want, you drag these spheres out a certain amount, and it's very arrhythmic, because, like, even if you get 2 drums on the same number, meaning, like, you drag it out to 6 and you drag the other drum sound out to, like, 3 or whatever, if you don't release it at the right time, then it won't land halfway through. So the rhythms will get on and off, and, like, there's this very, like, living and breathing quality to these rhythms that keep getting on and off from each other. And I use that as the main percussion for this song. But the song itself, I wrote it all on guitar, originally one guitar part, and then I took that Tascam field recorder out to the Tree of Life at City Park where there's some wind chimes up above, and I had my acoustic electric, not that one, but because that's a 12 string, but it is the 6-string version of that guitar. Actually, it's still probably a better high quality. Like it's a Yari, an Alvarez Yari, but it's probably better than that one. But it's my main go-to acoustic, and so I took that out to the park and recorded under the Tree of Life with the microphones, but also I plugged the guitar in, and so you're hearing that live acoustic. Plus, I went back and recorded. I think I'm pretty positive there's a dobro on there. I just couldn't remember. Like, it's been so long I've been working on some of this stuff that, like, I'm pretty sure there's a dobro on there. And the reason I'm pretty sure about that is because I wanted to hold on to this particular recording because that dobro ended up getting, like, lost or stolen or something. And that was a gift from somebody, a mutual friend, and somewhere between our studio, it went missing. And so that's one of, like, I have some recordings on that guitar, and I recorded this song on that guitar at one point. So I'm pretty sure that recording is on there. So there's a dobro, there's the Alvarez Yari acoustic out in, with field recording. So you can hear a lot of people, you can hear the wind chimes, you can hear a lot going on. And then the sphere tones, and then to really, like, it was a good song even with just those things, but then I decided to, like, I ended up writing a lead to it, and that lead I recorded on a Steve Vai Ibanez, and I really love the lead I did on that, and I really love, like, the tone it lends to it. This lead, I'm pretty sure I only use... Yeah, that guitar only comes in for the lead. It does stay through the remainder of the song, I believe. But either way, like, the way that electric guitar comes in over everything is amazing. And then just to, like, round everything out, I also did a bass track. One of the things, too... so even though this album is recorded over a long period of time, there's a lot of consistency. So the guitar tracks... A lot of the guitar tracks were recorded at the same time, or even if I recorded the guitar tracks, I was experimenting with reamping on this album, so all of the guitar tracks were originally recorded straight into the DAW one way or another, and then I did different reamping using the Sapphire Pro 40 to send, like, the audio from the computer directly into, like, cabinets and stuff like that, and then re-record with SM57 and stuff. So a lot of the tracking was done at the same time. All the tracking was done on actually almost all the tracking, like, for the first and the last song was done on my Gibson Les Paul, and really loved the tone it gave me. All the guitar tracks were done on the quad this time. If I was gonna do anything to this album, the only other thing I might do is reamp again using the Mark III, just so I could get some more bite in a few places, because the quad has bite, but I think I did a lot of it on the cleaner channels, and even when I did use channel 2, I don't think I used the lead channels overly a lot. So, like, I could go back and do, like, a dirty channel that's just like the Mark III, and then put that in there just for some more teeth. That's something I've thought about I might do before the album comes out. But currently I love the mix I'm at, so I don't want to tinker too much at. But like I said, consistency. The drums being so the studio I used was consistent. Is that true? Yeah, the studio was consistent. So no, that's not true. I used 2 studios for this. So there were 2 studios. I did have the Fountain Blue for some of it, and I probably did the drums for the first song at the Fontainebleau. No, I'm wrong about that. I was practicing. I did a lot of recording there, but I want to say, like, I did a lot of the original recordings there, but I want to say all the tracking and the reamping I ended up doing at the second studio, which was at my old apartment. And that was a really nice room setup that I had, and it had really awesome, like, it had high ceilings, so I really got a good sound from it because I really deaded out the walls a lot, but I had good reflex. Like, I did a little bit on the floors, but I don't like to kill the floor too much. Your ear wants to hear something coming from below, but I had a carpet under the drums naturally, and then, like, some hardwood floors, but the ceiling was pretty open, so there's a good reverb in that room. It had a good natural room tone. Anyway, so, but it is a different drum set on the first and last song in the same studio, and it turns out really well. Same cymbals, totally different shells, and went from, like, you know, your standard, I don't know, what is standard, 19, 20-inch kick to a 26-inch kick. So, and that's what I'm working with now. I don't have that other drum set anymore. I only have my big Ludwig, my big vintage Ludwig with the 26-inch. But a lot of consistencies with the way I did the album, and the reason I went into all that is because the bass. So the bass is definitely a consistent because I used my Rickenbacker, what is the 330, and I recorded the bass for the first song, the third song, and the fifth song. I want to say probably not the same day, but definitely, like, you know, in a consistent session. I was like, all right, we're getting our bass work done, kind of thing. And so in a lot of ways, that was something that lent well to this album. Is once I got more and more of the pieces put together, it was a lot easier to be like, all right, like when I did the drums, for instance, I did those first drums and I worked with them a lot. And then I don't remember exactly why I changed drum shells. I think I definitely gave the first drum set to a friend, one of the guys I used to jam with and work with, and I gave him the drum set and then put the Ludwig up. And so I did those drum sessions pretty close to each other. And I could do another, if anybody's interested, especially, like, I could do another episode where maybe I dive more into this with the Ableton files open and show you a lot of this stuff. That would be fun for me. It would be interesting, and I don't mind sharing process. Like, if anything, maybe somebody will get a lot, like, out of my process and what I did. And I definitely did. And like I said, that's why I don't feel bad about waiting so long on this album, because these are precious to me, and even though I say you shouldn't be overly precious, you're allowed to have things you're precious with, all right? You can have things you save back to yourself and that you put out when you're ready, and you can just do other things in the meantime. And so I have no regrets, because I put out Helicon Descending, which a lot of these techniques I learned went into Helicon Descending, which that limitation for that album was I wanted to create an album for Insta-album. I wanted for Instagram. I wanted 9 songs that were under a minute, and that was the limitation. And I did it. I wrote 9 songs. There's a theme to the album. There's like there's vocals, there's instrumentals, there's synthesizers, there's real instruments. Like, I did everything I wanted to do on that album. And it really, like, that's why I don't worry about taking so long to put this out, because I proved I can do a lot of that stuff with Helicon Descending. Now, Helicon Descending could have been better mixed. I'll say that. And I've thought about remixing it and re-releasing the songs separately. That was another thing maybe I did wrong, is I released the album as one track. It was originally created for Instagram, but, like, we ended up doing a bunch of films instead and never got around to doing that properly. So in the end, I was like, I just told Gerline, like, hey, I want to get this out. Do you want to do album art for it? And she ended up doing album art for each of them, for each of the songs. So there's 9 pieces of artwork, and actually this orange comes from Hella Condescending, but I took the orange and I put it with my little devil back there, and did a new little design. And that's a Zombie Shepherd logo I created. Yeah. Which, yeah, you can see the inspiration. So, anyway, Hella Condescending, Blood and Honey. Moloch was a fun one. I love Moloch Awakens. Moloch Awakens, so I use it all the time. Like, that is my most social media song because it's about 2 minutes. I created it with the bells first, meaning I do this a lot. Like, and it's why some things I finish and some things I don't. But a lot of my songs are straight through improv. Like, Hella Condescending, that song is literally, I wrote it on the bells. Like, I was playing with a synth. I want to say it wasn't even like a full synth. I might have only had 25 keys or something. I don't remember. But I do remember I was playing with these bell sounds, bong, bong, and I wrote a whole song 2 minutes long on nothing but these stupid bells. And I liked it so much that I said, all right, well, I'm going to put a 7-string guitar and drums on this, and that's with the 26-inch Ludwig. So, like, I was like, this is gonna be my version of a Mortician song or whatever, you know. And the reason I love it is because Moloch, obviously, like, it ties into like the whole like Moloch traps and human coordination, and I use that song whenever I'm posting some like dystopian or, you know, crazy just political shit. Like, and I kind of hoped that it would be used for that. I just kind of hoped that other people might use it because it starts off with this very like dun dun dun, you know, type of thing going on. And so yeah. So anyway, what's left to talk about this album? I only got through the third song. I really love the third song too. As far as like the way the guitars were written, like originally, you know, the first song was written, I think I wrote that one first. Then I wrote the last song. At some point I had written this other song and I was like, oh, I really like that. And I thought, you know, as the album grew, I ended up inserting that. I was like, ooh, that kind of still, it fits. And the where it's played, like key wise, and where, yeah, like it's very similar. The first song begins in one place, ends in another place, and then the third song kind of on the guitar begins in that same place as the end of the first song. I haven't even thought about it. I don't know key wise where the second song fits between 1 and 3, but guitar wise they flow like that, and the album flows in general, so it doesn't really matter and the fourth song, oddly enough, so the fourth song, where it came from, is an experiment with other things I was working on, and it ended up using the same drum sounds that I used for the second and third song. And so I've actually already released the fourth song as a song called Crimson Permanent Assurance, floundering in the dead accountancy of late stage capitalism. And something, I've changed it, and something made me feel like putting it in again. Like, I think something felt like maybe this album needed a little more, and I didn't know exactly what it needed, and I didn't really want to. Another thing is the consistency idea. So, like, if I at this point started writing new songs to add to this album, that would be a huge mistake. And that's also why I don't want to write too much on new tracks. Like I do need to finish the vocals for this, but I don't want to like add any real heavy like new guitar parts or do anything too additive, because like there is like a window in which this thing was created, and I want to kind of contain that to some, you know, you have to put limitations on things. And the other reason, like I was already pushing myself to put this out, but obviously like external limitations really help. And the external limitation for this was like, I mean, one, my Sapphire Pro 40 is working with my 2015 MacBook Pro. And like basically after the MacBook Pro dies, the Sapphire Pro 40 can work as a standalone unit, and that's it. Like it will no longer work with a computer. And I can probably maintain that Mac for a long time, but also I want to move on with music, and I want to like get, you know, the new version of Ableton and different things. And, you know, and I ended up, due to a friend of mine recommending to me, like he showed me a sale at Guitar Center on the Allen and Heath QU32. And I told him I had been wanting one. So I got a new board, and that new board is going to push me into the future. And now I want to do a new album. And I'm like, you can't do this album till you get the last album out. You got an album at home. No, so that is a big motivator to be like, all right, I'm going to be like, quote unquote, retiring my old setup. And the way I'm going to retire that old setup is by finishing this album and being done with it. And, you know, I may go through my Ableton project files in general and find other things that need to be like released and put a bow on it and get it out there. And, yeah, so that was kind of the impetus to like really, I want to get onto new things, so I got to get this out. And I'm not just going to like dump it in the world. I'm going to try to like really promote it and get people listening to it, even if it is kind of inaccessible. But I'm going to do it. You know, I've also went back and forth with like release. Like I hate Spotify, but I'm probably going to end up having to do it. Like it just is the world we're in. And at this point, I'm like, I don't know, like I've tried everything. I've tried the NFT thing. I've tried to like stick to physical medium. It's like, you know, it's a losing battle, and my music is inaccessible as it is. Like I thought about doing books with this. Like I started making books, literally hand cutting and creating books, and a lot of work went into that. And I like the book making stuff, but like then I thought about it and I'm like, it's going to be harder to get people to listen to my songs this way. If I just, like, the music is inaccessible enough if all you have to do is press play. So I'm just like, whatever, I don't care, you know. And I can talk more, you know, that kind of like not caring attitude is because of AI and Spotify. And like, you know, I hate Spotify and the fact that everybody is using Spotify as if it's like, you know, not actively destroying the music industry, but it is what it is. I'm not going to get on my high horse about that. We all know whatever. So the fourth song has already been released, I think, on SoundCloud. You can check that out, Crimson Permanent Assurance. But I'm going to do a different title. The only thing I have thought about adding some kind of vocal track to this, maybe another spoken word. Maybe that would be good for this. If I did add vocals to this one, fourth track, then that would mean only one instrumental track on the album. And right now there's two, and I kind of like that rhythm. Like, I think it's great. Like, first song has vocals, second song is poetry, third song is just stringed instruments, fourth song is just synthetic instruments and instrumental, but also arrhythmic, atonal, not atonal too bad in a like too off, but in a atonal in a Tom Waits type of way. And then the fifth song is very much like the first song in arrangement and structure, but also very different. It has its own thing. And the other thing is that it's only 5 songs and it's 42 minutes. So that also just scratches my Discordian itch. If you know, you know. 5 songs, 42 minutes. And every song is completely original. And at the same time, there is a cohesion. So I really love where this album has arrived, and I'm almost done, and I can't wait to get it out to y'all, and I can't wait to start on the next album, whatever that might be. I'm not rushing into that next album, but I have been setting up my studio. I've got everything, I've got most of my rigs and everything plugged into the QU32 at this point, and I'm ready to really get weird and get creative while also continuing to promote and talk about this album. And I'm really I was planning to talk more about AI and crypto and other human coordination stuff, but this album really ate up the time, and I'm okay with that, because you know what, this is why I'm here. Like, all that other stuff, I came into those other things. I came into crypto and NFTs and even politics, and is part of my art. Like, all of this stuff is together, but like, because of having a baby and building a house and doing all these things I've been working on, like you get pulled away from those creative efforts a lot. You spend, it's beautiful. I think about it like in a David Lynch, Tom Waits kind of way, especially David Lynch more than Tom Waits. But I know Tom Waits is probably like this, or he is. I just don't know what degree. We know a lot more about David Lynch in this aspect. But, people look at David Lynch as a filmmaker, but he was an artist. And so he was always working on something, even though he wasn't always releasing something. And that's kind of how I view my life. And that's why I don't worry about not having a podcast episode out, or pushing myself to be active on social media all the time, or always releasing a song, because, I'm creating something all the time. And sometimes what I'm creating and what I'm working on is just dinner, or repairing the house, or making the garden beautiful, or whatever it is. And those things are just as important. And if anything, it's been about understanding that those things are actually more important, because social media and the podcast and the art and the music and all those things are tied more to your ego and your external validation from the world. And being able to put my art out and not worry as much about that, like, I think actually worrying about that is what's kept me from putting art out, because you see, that it's not getting the return and the love you would want it to get, and so then you get discouraged from putting it out. And I'm also like, I'm not gonna be driven by Spotify or YouTube or anybody, TikTok or anybody else, to be always working for them and doing what they want me to do. And so, like, that's why I don't self-censor a whole lot, and I just put things out when I want, and I don't do things on a schedule, and I don't put it out every day. And I also can't complain when I don't make it, because I'm not doing what they expect me to do to make it, and I never have. And I've always hated the music industry, and I've never played by the rules, so I shouldn't expect to achieve the things that it has to offer. I'm doing my own thing in my own lane, and I'm okay with that. And really, that's the most important thing I've taken out of the journey that's brought me to releasing this album. And I'm really, I've gone everywhere. I've gone around the world for this album. Like, I went into working on short films for this album. I went into exploring ambience. I went into podcasting and crypto, and all these things was in a lot of ways for this album. So it's really a beautiful thing, and I'm really happy to be releasing it and sharing it. And so stay tuned, and I will still continue talking about things, and we'll get into some new things. And yeah, hopefully, I'm feeling the inspiration to talk more about AI, crypto, and current events very soon, because I do have a lot of opinions. I just haven't felt like doing this. But you can see I got a new mic, so like, I've needed to put it to use, and I got a new camera a while back. I think I've done a few episodes on this camera, and I've done better lighting situations, and it's all coming together. And yep, love you guys. Thanks for support, and I will see you soon. Thanks.